أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. My elders, brothers, sisters in Islam and Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So last Thursday when we gathered, we did the same thing. We had dua and then we had the lecture afterwards. And I commented to the brothers today that I noticed last week that there were some eyelids that were drooping and people were checking their watches and that type of thing. But they assured me that tonight people are well rested because most of you took the day off. So inshallah that's the case. But there is strong coffee back in the room over there in case anybody is tired. Inshallah, we know that time is a little bit late, but I'm hoping inshallah that you guys can inshallah stay focused and we can inshallah benefit from the Quran tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I wanted to thank all those who came out last night for the program. Alhamdulillah, I personally was very blessed to be part of the gathering that was here. And I was really also impressed by the numbers of people who came out, sisters, brothers, young people, elderly people, everyone was here, alhamdulillah, as I'm sure they were in other centers as well too. So may Allah accept all your a'mal. And inshallah, the experience was one of turning over a new leaf, like a rebirth. Laylatul Qadr and Ramadan as a whole is an opportunity for us to restart, hit the reset button, and get focused back into what is really important for us. And it's not just a temporary thing just for the month of Ramadan, it's supposed to be a life-changing thing as well too. So I hope inshallah that we are experiencing this, we're actually feeling this within. And with whatever remains of the month of Ramadan, we have to do whatever it takes to cement whatever we were able to get in the night of Qadr, inshallah. May Allah accept all your a'mal. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, that was a very weak salawat. It's not a good sign for what's going to happen now. So I need a louder salawat, please. All right, the topic we've been covering is the Quran and me. We've been looking at what the Quran says about a human being. And we talked about a number of different aspects. We're just going through and seeing what sort of lessons we can derive from the Quran about us as human beings. Last night we began to cover a series of verses which apparently talk about a human being in a negative light. Before that, we were saying that Allah mentions that human beings have a special creation, which is the soul, and how the human being is meant to be the Khalifa of Allah on the earth, and other discussions as well too. Last night, we talked about how Allah refers to us as somebody who is weak. We're one of His weaker creations. But we explained how that's not something which is a negative thing. It's something that can be turned into something positive. And that was the discussion last night. Tonight I want to cover another one of the verses that talks about human beings apparently in a negative light. And once again, we're going to see how this is something that we can turn into something which is positive. These set of verses come to us from Surah Al-Ahzab, which is Surah 33, the last two verses of this surah. And that's what we're going to cover tonight, inshallah. Before I do that, I just want to mention that this verse it's a famous verse. It's known as the verse of the amana, the trust. And according to commentators of the Quran, this is one of the most meaningful verses of the Quran and one of the most beautiful verses of the Quran as well. Of course, all verses in the Quran are meaningful, all of them are beautiful. But this particular verse is something which is extremely special. Also, because of the nature of the verse, because of the depth of the verse, there's been a lot of discussion about it. What does it actually mean? And there's a lot of different writings. In fact, there's books written just about this particular verse by our great scholars. Tonight, I just want to give a synopsis of some of the main lessons that we can take from this verse that inshallah we can take and practically apply to our lives. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. Roughly in translation, what this verse means is that we presented the amana, the trust, to the heavens, to the skies, and to the earth, and to the mountains. But they refused to carry this trust, and they were apprehensive of doing so. But the human being carried the trust. Indeed, the human being is extremely zaloom and jahul. And I'm not going to translate that purposely for now because we're going to come to that towards the end of the speech, inshallah. Now, there's a lot of question marks that might have come to your mind when I was reading the translation. First of all, when Allah says that He presented the trust, what is that trust that He presented? Also, when He presented it to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountain, what does it mean to present something to them? Does it mean that He talked to them and they responded back? Like, is it that they spoke? Was this an event that took place? And then when it says فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا, they refused to carry this trust and they were apprehensive of it. How was it? Was it the case that they sort of like were shaking in their boots and like they kind of like stepped back from it and they said that no, we can't take this, we don't want to take it? Or is it something else? And if it's the case that the human being has taken on this trust and he's carrying this trust, then when we look at different human beings, we don't see that they're carrying something on their backs. Because the verse says that they're carrying this trust that the mountains and the skies could not carry. So in order for us to understand this verse, we have to first look at what is meant by amana. What is first meant by this concept of a trust? A trust is something we all understand. Imagine that you have something which is precious. Let's say that you're going on vacation for a month. And you have a nice place, right? You want to make sure that it's kept well. So you give the keys to your place to a trusted friend, and you say that, okay, this is some valuable stuff at home. I want you to check it out, keep it clean for me. When I come back, then I'll get back the keys from you, and thank you very much for your assistance. Now, your friend is going to take that as a trust then, that you've entrusted him with the keys and with making sure that your place is kept clean and safe, and you're making sure nobody comes in and robs it. It's a concept that we all know about, this idea of there being a trust. Now, Allah says that He offered this trust to other things in the universe. All right? When we look at what the commentators say, they explain to us that this offering doesn't have to be in the form of like there was an event that took place that everything started just speaking at once when this thing was being offered to them. No. Rather, they say that there was something, this trust, the nature of this trust is something such that everything but a human being is not capable of being able to accept the trust and to maintain it. Meaning that it's not the case that the mountains, for example, looked at this and they said that, we'd rather not. No, it wasn't like that. It was the case that when they looked at it, when it was compared to them, Allah determined that they are not capable of being able to take on this trust. Like, for example, again, back to this thing, the keys to your place, right? You're not going to give the keys to your place to a kid, right? right? Because the kid won't know what to do with the keys, right? So you give the keys to somebody who is capable of being able to maintain that place for you and keep tabs on it. You're not going to give it to somebody who doesn't have a car and not going to be able to visit your place either. They have to have the right type of capacity to be able to take care of that trust that you're giving them. So here, the commentators say that everything else in this universe was not able to carry this trust. So what we need to do is think a little bit. Now, I'm reading this verse right here. I need to step back and I need to consider myself with respect to everything else in this universe. Yesterday we talked about this a bit, that one of the things that we're encouraged to do is to compare ourselves to other things. Like when I go outside, right, I shouldn't just be so self-centered and thinking about myself and my own concerns. Sometimes I should take a look around me and see what's going on. As I'm going through the hills, as I see the sun in the sky. Like in the morning, all of us typically, many of us go out in the morning. Just try to get into this habit once in a while at least, that when you see the sun rising in the sky, just for a moment remember Allah. Right? And just remember and compare yourself to that sun that's there rising in the sky. One of the ways of comparing ourselves is to see that, okay, what am I compared to that right there? And what am I compared to all the other millions, in fact billions of other human beings who are on the earth right now? And just this thought process itself can really be beneficial and constructive. For example, one of the thoughts that might come to your mind is this, that when I compare myself to everything else out there, I'm actually just like a speck of dust compared to the entire rest of the universe, because there's so many other things out there. But despite my being so small and how much volume do I occupy in this earth, right? I'm so insignificant. But at the same time, Allah still has His care for me. He still has His attention on me. He's still supporting me. He's still, giving me so much. And He's still being a source of deflecting so much bala from me as well too. Like that thought itself is a very humbling thought, and we need to have those thoughts in our lives. That's one thought. Another thought we get from this verse right here, which is that let me look at myself and compare myself to everything else out there. I see the sun, and the sun is, from my perspective at least, it's moving along a trajectory and traversing a path which it does every single day. It did it yesterday, it's doing it today, it's going to do it tomorrow as well too. And we're able to understand, we know what sort of trajectory it's going to keep, and we know exactly when it's going to rise, when it's going to set, and how it's going to move across the sky. I see those clouds moving across the sky, and I need to explain this. I mean, why am I going into detail? Because sometimes if we're not taught how to think like this, we don't know what to think like. So for my own benefit, for your benefit, I'm trying to explain in detail. I see those clouds moving around the sky. I have to think, wait a minute, those clouds are doing exactly what they've been programmed to do. Now, I'm not explaining it from a scientific basis. From my perspective as a human being, I'm seeing that these clouds are floating around the sky. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. And everything else around me too, it's following a course which has been set forth for it. I look at one time, I don't know what it's like here in this area of California, but in Northern California, right, it's very clear. There's a certain time of the year where everything turns green, and there's a certain time where everything turns brown. And that's just the way that things are. Everything has its course that it follows in nature. The birds that are flying around, the insects that are moving around, everything has an instinctual sort of way of operating, and it knows what to do in this universe. Now I'm here, and I'm comparing myself to all these, and if I think about it, and inshallah you're thinking about it, and you've already realized this, there's a big difference between me and everything else. What is the big difference between me and everything else out there? It's a very important thing. What is it? It's that I am given a choice. I'm not pre-programmed, right? I can choose exactly what I please to do, and that's one thing that distinguishes me from every other thing in this universe, right? I have the free will to choose whatever I fancy. Now, this is something which, on one hand, is a blessing, right? Because it's nice to be able to choose, right? We feel good that we're not pre-programmed. We feel good that we're not predestined to do whatever we want. It's something which is a blessing. But on the other hand, it's a very serious responsibility as well too. Now, the verse says that Allah presented this amana, this trust, to the other things in this universe. They were unable to take it. Why are they unable to take it? Because they don't have the capacity. They already are doing things in a certain way. It's like if you have a glass here and it's filled with water already, you can't put any more water in it. All these other things out there, they're operating in a certain way. It's already set for them. But human beings are different. They have that capacity. They start out and they can go this way or they can go that way. Inna hadaynahu sabil imma shakiran wa imma kafura. We have shown him the way. He can be thankful or he can be ungrateful. It's up to them. So this is the essence of this amana, the essence of this trust is the ability to choose what our destiny is going to be. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, when you go to the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt and you look at what the other commentators of the Quran have said, the essence of what they're saying is very similar to this. But sometimes they use language which is a little bit different. You see, brothers and sisters, when you talk about the freedom to choose, there's a few things that come along with that. One of them is that on one hand we have the freedom to choose. On the other hand, we're given a set of instructions. We're given an instruction manual which tells us what choices to make in our life. Right? And that is the taklif that we've been given, the responsibility that we have in front of God. So sometimes this amana, this great divine trust, is referred to as the taklif that Allah has given us. But you see, it's one and the same thing, that this freedom of choice, right, it leads to wanting to choose the right thing. Other traditions, they mention that what this trust is the wilaya. And what that means is that when somebody has this freedom to choose and they follow the right instructions, the result of that is they're going to be given a very special gift, which is proximity to Allah. And that is called wilaya. Wilaya, in the essence of wilaya, is when something comes right after something else, like right after, it's called wali. Waliya, something comes right after. So one of the meanings of wilaya is when somebody is so close to Allah, they're considered one of the awliya of Allah because they come right after Allah, awliya from waliya. So some of the traditions say that this amana is the wilaya of Allah. What that is referring to is that somebody, as a result of making the right decisions, following the taklif which is given to them, the result that they're going to attain is that wilaya. So it's looking at the same thing from the perspective of the results. Now, I want to step back now and see if we can derive a couple of lessons from this verse right here. Number one is when Allah refers to this blessing as an amana, that's something which is very important for us to pay attention to. This concept of an amana is something that we as human beings, like, we understand, right? If somebody gives you something, part of just as being a human being, whether you're a Muslim or you're not a Muslim, there's a feeling that, okay, if you're given something and trusted with something, you have to give it back to that person. You have to do with it whatever that person asks you to do. And this is one of the teachings that the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, they emphasized on a lot, right? They said that, okay, ruddul amanat, right? This is from the Quran as well too, that you should give back the amanats that are given to you. You've all heard this from Imam Zainul Abidin ﷺ. He says that even if I were given the sword that was used to kill my father as an amana, as a trust, then I would return even that to its owner as well too. Right? Because he's talking about as just this is something that we understand to be something which is right. So when it comes to looking at this responsibility that we have for being a human being, that the responsibility for a human being to become a human being, to achieve the purpose for what he's been created, when we consider that to be a trust, a divine trust, then it takes on a different perspective. Example from the Quran. This is a simple example, and then we'll go into it a little bit deeper. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, you know the story, right? He has to flee from Egypt. He goes to Madian, and he sees that there's a couple of women there who are with sort of on the side, and they have these animals. And he asks them, do you need anything? So they tell him that our father is sick, and these guys who are here, they don't let us get a turn to get water for our animals. So he says, I'll help you out. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he helps them out. And he does it single-handedly. And afterwards, he does it for the sake of Allah. He's tired, he doesn't have a place to stay, he's hot, and he's hungry as well too. And he makes a dua that, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Oh Allah, whatever you can give me at this point, I'm in needy of that. You've heard the story. Now, one of these two women comes back, and she tells him that my father wishes to see you and reward you for that service that you performed for us. Nabi Musa says that, okay, fine, I'll go with you. And they start going, but he tells her something. He says that, I want you to walk behind me, I'll walk in front. Now she's the one who knows where to go, right? It's her home. He doesn't know where it is, but he tells her that, I want to walk in front and you walk behind me. So she asks, why is this the case? Obviously it would be natural for her to walk because she knows the way. He tells her at that point that we, the children of Ya'qub, do not stare at the backs of women. He's somebody who's careful about how he uses his eyes. Anyhow, they go to the father, and there's a conversation that takes place between Nabi Musa and the father. The father happens to be Nabi Shu'aib, a prophet of God. And there's a conversation that takes place. Eventually, one of the two daughters tells her father, she says that, oh Allah, she tells him that, oh my father, why don't you hire him? Because he is somebody who is qawi and ameen. He is somebody who is strong and somebody who keeps his trust. Ameen is somebody who is trustworthy. When you give him or her a trust, then that person keeps that trust. Now, according to hadith, right, the father, Nabi Shu'aib, asks her, he says that his being strong, that's something which I understand, because he was able to water the animals all by himself. That's something which I understand. But I want you to explain to me, why is it that you're saying that he's somebody who is ameen, somebody who keeps his trust? And then she explains that, well, when we were walking here and we came here, this is what he said to do. That he said, you walk in behind me and I walk in front. So this is an example that we have of somebody who's ameen. Now, what is it that makes Nabi Musa ameen? It's that he's somebody who considers the eyes that are given to him as being a trust from God. It's not something that he has priority over, and it's his prerogative to use however he wants. But rather, he's looking and seeing how is it that God wants to use it and acting accordingly. That's what you do. When you're given a trust, then you say, okay, how is it that the owner wants me to deal with this trust? I don't consider it as my property, I consider it as the owner's property, and then I'm going to return it back again. We're told in a similar sort of vein of encouragement from the Ahlul Bayt. There's one story I came across where, and this is for our youth for today, right? Like that, there's a story that one of the good companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, so he was a good companion. He was a young man as well too, and he was at the height of his passions, and he was a young man. And one time he makes a mistake. Okay, he goes to somebody's home and he has an inappropriate interaction with a non-mahram. So he makes this mistake, and afterwards he realizes that he made this mistake, and he goes to the masjid and repents. I mean, he's one of the companions. He considers himself to be among the inner circle of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and that's not befitting for one of those. The next day, after he's repented in the masjid, he's sort of atoned for his wrongdoing, he happens to see Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And Imam Sadiq, when he sees him, he greets him, he knows what happened. You see, one of the things that we have to understand and realize and believe in is that our deeds are presented to the Imam of our time. Right? This is something that we can substantiate from the Quran and from Hadith as well too. He knows what his companion had done. So he asks him a question indirectly. He says, so what did you do from that time yesterday? And he tells him that, oh, Imam, he realizes, right, that he had made a mistake. He says that, I've been in the masjid since then, and he's sort of repentant and sorry for what he did. The Imam alayhi salam wants to remind him of something very important. He says that, don't you know that those who wish to reach our amr, right? In hadith, as a side point, in hadith, if you look at, there's a number of hadith from the Ahlul Bayt where they talk about amruna, our affair. And what that means is the wilaya, the special proximity that one can attain to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt. He tells this young man, he says, don't you know that our affair, if you want to become close to us, if you want to really be a true Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, our affair cannot be attained except through wara'. Wara' means that special level of taqwa where one controls himself, where one understands that everything that we have, from our eyes, from our hands, from our body, all of this is not under our control. It's supposed to be used as a trust from God. And those who want to attain the special proximity to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt, they have to see the things in this light. This is how we attain the wilayah, and this is why this amana has been explained as being the wilayah, that special proximity to Allah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. If somebody wants to reach this, they have to consider everything that they have, their body, their time, their possessions, what they do, everything as being not under their own prerogative and however they want to dispose of, but rather being something in the hands of God. If you ever wondered why it's the case that sometimes the question comes up, why is it that our very pious scholars, right, why is it that you find that they're always repentant, they're always remorseful over their past deeds? You might wonder that, okay, here I am, I might be committing sins that these type of people would never commit. But yet, when it comes time for them to do istighfar, for them to talk to Allah, on one hand, they're so much more repentant, on the other hand, they're so much thankful as well too. What's different about that? One of the reasons is this very point right here, is that when somebody starts to see everything that they have as being an amana of Allah, then suddenly that changed the perspective, because now I want to return this amana. As I'm leaving this world, I want to tell Allah, I want to tell my Imam that I've done the very best job I could have to preserve my humanity and to reach that goal which you had laid out for me. Every moment of my life, I didn't squander even a moment. I tried my hardest, every breath, every movement to please you. One of my teachers told me a story once. He said that there's a historical report that Imam alayhi salam, he went to get his beard trimmed. And as he was getting his beard trimmed, he was doing dhikr of Allah, like he was saying subhanallah, subhanallah. And the barber who was trimming his facial hair, he says that, can you stop doing your dhikr for just a moment so I can at least properly trim your beard, and then you can continue your dhikr, right? But the Imam alayhi salam says that no. He says, no, I can't, because even this right here, this is something that I have to do. It's part of my routine. I've scheduled this in as well too. How even a moment they don't let go by just squandered. Imam Khomeini, they say that they used to be able to set their clocks based on his movements, right? Because he was so precise. Not even a moment would he want to squander. Everything is an amana, everything is a trust. The same way that even if an enemy would give their sword, we would want to return it. Now, this is Allah who's giving us not a sword, He's giving us the potential to reach perfection. Why would we even squander even a moment of that? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The last part of the verse is this: إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. Human beings are, the insan, a human being, is dhalum and jahul. Now, usually, when somebody reads the translation of this, right, they read it like this. They say that we offered this trust to human beings. Nobody else accepted it, but human beings accepted it. And human beings are jahil and they're dhalim. They're ignorant and they're ones who, they're wrongdoers. So normally this is how we think about it. We're like, it's kind of like where, everyone, like there's something out there, and all the smart people, they know that this is something which is like, let's say it's like, I don't know, it's an April Fool's joke or something, right? Let's say there's like a present out there, right? And it's an April Fool's joke. Everyone else is smart, right? They don't take it. But the foolish guy, like the dumb guy, he goes and takes it. And then afterwards we're like making fun of him, hey, you're so stupid because you took that, right? Didn't you know that was a trick? Sometimes we come to this verse and we think that, the mountains are smart, right? The skies are smart, the earth is smart because they didn't take this thing on. But a human being is the one who's, a loser because he took it on. He's so jahul, he's so zalim, he's such an oppressor, he's such a wrongdoer, he's so ignorant. Now, this is far beyond the Quran to say something like that. So we really do have to understand, what is Allah trying to say here? According to a very beautiful explanation that Allama Tabatabai gives in Al-Mizan, it's so beautiful, inshallah, I'm not going to take too much of your time, inshallah, I just want to end with this, and then we'll mention a few words on Masab for Imam Hussein. This is Thursday night after all. He says that, look at these two qualities, that an insan is dhalum and jahul. First of all, in Arabic, it doesn't mean, when you call somebody dhalum or jahul, it doesn't mean that they are ignorant and they are wrongdoers. But rather, it means that they have the capacity, one of the meanings is they have the capacity to be people who do wrong. They have the capacity to be people who are ignorant. So, what he explains is that, look at, when it comes to this adjective of being intelligent and being somebody who has knowledgeable, can you call a mountain knowledgeable? Have you ever heard of a knowledgeable mountain? No. Can you call one of the clouds or let's say the atmosphere knowledgeable? No, you can't. Can you call a piece of earth or something on the earth knowledgeable? Can you call some natural sort of thing growing on the ground as being something which is trying to establish justice? You can't, right? There's certain adjectives which don't apply to something unless it's possible for it to have the opposite of that. So what he explains is that for human beings to be called dhalum and jahul, it's actually something which is of merit, because when a human being has the capacity to be a dhalim, similarly he has the capacity to be adil as well too. When he has the capacity to be a dhalum, a jahul, he has the capacity to be alim as well too. So what that tells us is that Allah is telling us in this verse that, look, you start out as an empty vessel. But you are unlike everything else in this universe because you have the capacity to gain things that they cannot gain. You can gain the attribute of being alim, you can gain the attribute of being alim, you can even become alam, you can even become allama as well too. That's within your capacity. But other things can't. You can become one who establishes justice on the earth as well too. You have the capacity of doing that. So this is not a term of sort of demeaning term. No, it's saying that this is the way you start out, but now don't stay there. Advance beyond that point. Let it not be the case that at the end you end up the same way that you were, or even worse than that. And the last point I'll mention in regards to this, brothers and sisters, is that sometimes by being in the society, we get fooled regarding this point. Sometimes we're presented, in particular about the ilm part of this, we're presented with things that we think are knowledge, but they're not really knowledge. They're a bunch of theories and guesswork, and we tend to put value on that, and we forget what's really important. Let me give you one example. Political science, all right, as it's taught in universities right now. How much of a science is it really? Right? Is it the case that somebody sat out there and really understood in a way that gives them certainty that this is the way to run a society in order to be able to establish a just society? Is that what it's about? Or is it about a bunch of theories that human beings have guessed at and they've worked on to sort of approximate what it would take if somebody wants to gain control over other people? Right? Sometimes we consider the things we study in university as being right next to God. Right? We're like, this is something which is, it's something which is definitely true, and I have to go and study it. And sometimes it is very important. Sometimes it is very useful as well too. But sometimes what we're studying actually is in contrary to the teachings of God, because it's just a bunch of guesswork. And they give degrees on it, they give salaries based on this, and they give positions on that, but actually we're not attaining anything in the form of real knowledge. We have to be careful regarding this. We can't be fooled by it. Just an example in regards to this. If you go to political science and you ask them, okay, if you were to analyze the government of Muawiyah versus the government of Imam Ali, who was more successful? They would say Muawiyah. Any day they would say Muawiyah. They'd start listing out, okay, Muawiyah was able to conquer this empire, and he was able to amass this amount of forces, he was able to have this much wealth, and at the same time he had a good life too. He had the dancing girls, he had the courtiers, he had like whatever he had, he had everything. Okay? Imam Ali, they'd be like, oh, he was a failure politically, right? He wasn't able to even keep his own people together, he lost everyone, like civil wars, right? They'd be like, that's how they would analyze it. But from our perspective, right, when we look at it, we say that Muawiyah was an utter failure, and Imam Ali Islam was the paradigm of success. We have to understand this, brothers and sisters. We can't be fooled. Knowledge, what is true knowledge? All that glitters is not gold, they say. Right? All that gives a high-paying salary, everything that people pride in, it's not always something which is actually truly knowledge. There was one time a companion comes to Imam Sadiq, he says that, I want you to explain what aql is to me. Right? And Imam Sadiq says that, he looks at me and says, okay, let me explain to it very simply. He says, Al-aqlu ma ubida bihi ar-Rahman waqtusiba bihi al-jinan. The aql is that means by which you obey the Rahman and you attain paradise. Anything, any decision that you make that is contrary to that, even if it's for your worldly benefit, even if it's for that you can gain power over other people, even if it's that you can gain a big salary, right? If it's contrary to the pleasure of God, that's not aql. Right? Aql, being a wise person, being a clever person, being a successful person, being a knowledgeable person, all of that has to be centered on pleasing God. So that person is confused. He says that, well, if that's the case, then what did Muawiyah have? Didn't Muawiyah have aql? Right? Because he was able to amass such an empire over him. He was so successful. He lived longer than Imam Ali too. Right? Then Imam Sadiq explained, he says that no. That's not aql. You got it wrong. That's not. That tilka nakra, tilka shaytana. That's something which is evilness. That's something which is just cleverness. That's something which is devilish cleverness. Don't be fooled by the apparent nature of something which you think is good. No, everything that glitters is not gold. Look and go and see how much is this pleasing to God and how much does it take us away from God. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.